What's going on, people in YouTube land? Kimchi, Chris here, and welcome to today's brand new video, the second episode in the brand new series Kimchi Classics, where I tackle classic records and give you guys hopefully a thought-provoking, somewhat in-depth, and hopefully a little bit entertaining review of classic records. And I've decided for these first episodes I'm going to stick with music I experienced early in life because that's what helped form my mindset as far as music goes, the culture surrounding music, and basically the entire way I consume music. And as a result, it'll kind of help you see the path that took me to where I am now from where I started. Now, another thing you'll see is that, my opinions didn't change a whole lot. I got into heavier stuff over time, but a lot of my early music obsessions and music favorites were actually pretty good records overall. I'm not going to really avoid anything that was bad because there's not a lot of bad stuff in there to avoid. And that brings us to the record that we are going to take a deep dive into today. And as far as I can remember, one of the earliest bands I was into other than Kiss. And the record that we're going to be looking at is right here. We're looking at Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith. This is a classic record, about as classic as they get in my humble opinion. I love this record. Spoiler alert, if that's all you really wanted to know from this review, if I loved it or hated it, you can turn it off right now, but I'd prefer you not to because the discussion I have planned for this record hopefully will be interesting enough, because looking at this record from a very, young age all the way till now, my opinions have been pretty similar about it. It's been very consistent in my life, and this is one of those records that no matter how much I listen to it, I don't get tired of it. Now, I can already hear someone out there now saying, look at what Aerosmith became, why do you even care about this band? But you gotta remember what Aerosmith was, and if you haven't really delved into these 70s records, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're into rock and roll music. We all know the hits. We all know Walk This Way, Dream On, Sweet Emotion, Kings and Queens, things of that nature, but these records have a lot of good deep cuts, and guess what? On this review, we're gonna go into every track individually, because there's not a bad track on this record, as well as several other ones they released around this time period. I just listened to it a few minutes ago to kind of, reinvigorate my energy and my excitement about this record, and I gotta say, listening to it for the first time in a really long time, all the memories came back to me. They just came flooding back to me, and I realized why this is such a good record. I'm not sure if this is my number one favorite Aerosmith record, but it's a top contender. It's right up there with 3 other ones. There's 4 Aerosmith records. They're always just fighting, always in the ring, always trying to be my favorite record. And I'm not going to tell you what those are, because eventually I'll probably review them on here, but this one's a top contender, so needless to say, I can't praise this thing enough. It's a good record. It's a very, very good record. But that's enough praising this rock and roll classic without getting into the nitty-gritty of the actual tracks. Let's jump into the tracks. And first off, this one just comes out of the gate swinging with the title track, Toys in the Attic. And what a song this is. It is such a good rock and roll song. It's basically a, thesis statement of what you're gonna get on this record. Just fast, in-your-face rock and roll, no frills, just an amazing rock and roll band firing on all cylinders. And you know it's gonna be good the second the track starts. I've always been a fan of that little cymbal sound that's at the very, very beginning, the one that kind of opens the track right as it goes right into the guitar. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about if you've listened to the song recently, or if you just know the song very well. That weird cymbal sound, the recording effect on it is so masterful. It's just, it's mind-boggling that came out so well, but you can tell these guys knew this was going to be the first track, and they really wanted to have it in your face and showing you what this record was going to be about. And don't even get me started on the guitar attack. They're just in there raging in your face, and then out of nowhere Steven's voice comes in and it's just full rock and roll ecstasy. This is what rock and roll music should be. And lyrically, I'm sure there's some metaphors going on in here, but I didn't look it up. I didn't want to bore you with that. But as a kid, I kind of took this literal, thinking that, oh, these guys are in an attic looking at old toys, singing about it. That's weird, but I don't care. It's an amazing song. And then just like that, it's done. Doesn't overstay its welcome, gets the rock and roll in, and then gets out. And then track number 2 starts, Uncle Salty, which is a completely different song vibe-wise. It's so cool. It just has this weird aura about it. I don't know what it's talking about. Again, I'm sure there's some metaphors here. I don't know. Steven Tyler was on a lot of drugs at the time, so was the whole band, but it has a completely different vibe. It just gives me kind of like a swampy vibe. I can see these guys playing this in a swamp, and as a kid, that's kind of how I always pictured it. I saw them just on a boat, rocking out, looking like the guys on the back of the album cover, which, by the way, I don't think we showed that earlier, but just look at them on the back. They're just looking about as great as ever. And yeah, Uncle Salty, cool song, underrated song. Really underrated song. I don't really hear anyone talk about it, but it's really cool. The part where they talk about it being a sunny day outside the window, that part is just like haunting, but in a beautiful way. It's just a really well-constructed song, and it's interesting to think that there were so many parts and so many layers to a song that's essentially a filler song for lack of better words, but it's not a filler song at all to me. This is a stone cold classic, and it's just as good as any of the other songs that everyone knows from Aerosmith and talks about all the time. And then when Uncle Salty's done, they get right back into the Four on the Floor rockin' with Adam's Apple. What a killer song that, again, probably has some metaphors going on there, because there's obviously some Adam and Eve and things of that nature going on, but these lyrics, this is one of those records that from my youth I have never really looked too hard into the lyrics, because they don't make a whole lot of sense when you just listen to them at face value. But that's fine, because we're here to get down, listen to some rock and roll music, dance around, sing along, and they accomplish that really well with Adam's Apple. And let's talk about riffs. The riffs are plentiful on this song. Joe Perry and Brad Whitford just kill it on this song. They're such an iconic rock and roll duo, and everyone always talks about Joe, of course, but you know what? He wouldn't be there without his main man in command there, Brad Whitford, and this track really guitar-wise is just off the rails. What a good guitar riff-laden song. And then right after that, we have track number 4, which is arguably Aerosmith's most iconic song, Walk This Way. We all know it. Hopefully we all love it. Some of us might hate it at this point, but that's mostly from Fatigue. First time you heard this song, I guarantee you thought it was cool, because that riff, talking about riffs, the opening riff that we all know, it's just so good. And it's funny that Run DMC went on to, of course, do their version with the boys, because it has a very hip-hop feel to it. A lot of people probably wouldn't like to admit that. They would say, oh, well, Run DMC did this or did that. But you know what? They saw something in that song, and you know, it works really well in that scenario. And even with this original version, Steven kind of raps the verses. Even if that wasn't a huge thing yet, he kind of does do a rapped verse on this. But getting back to this original one, you know, you can tell these guys knew this was going to be a big song. The production, the style of playing, just the tenacity they deliver it with is just so over the top that you can tell these guys were in the studio and they were saying, yeah, this one's gonna be a classic. We can just tell this one's gonna be a classic. And if that's what they were doing, they were completely on the ball. They were not wrong. They knew this was great. And you know, if you take the Fatigue side out of it, this is still a killer rock and roll song that when you hear it in the placement of the record, it really does stick out as a stone cold classic. And you know, there's a reason for that. And then right after Walk This Way, for the last track on side 1, if you're listening to the vinyl, the band decided to give you something that was a little bit different, a little bit of a break from the pure rock and roll energy of the song before. It's still a rockin', but it's a different type of rockin' with the song Big 10-Inch Record, which is kind of a throwback to boogie and 50s style rock and roll. And oh boy, the metaphors on this song, when Steven yells out, suck on my big 10-inch, the iconic pause, and then he says, record. You gotta love that. Putting that on a record in 1975 definitely had to have some danger to it, but well, you know, these were rock and roll guys, you know, they were used to danger. They were known as the Bad Boys from Boston, and back in that time, you couldn't say the things that a band like Steel Panther says now, but you could definitely make some innuendo, and oh boy, the innuendo is there on this track. But with that aside, the lyrics are really playful and a little bit silly, but that's what makes it great. And the boogie style and 50s throwback style of playing on this is great. I mean, it sounds like an old song, and that's what these guys were going for on this one. You can tell they wanted to have just kind of a playful, fun song to end the record after the song that they were obviously planning to be the big single. And it works really well in the placement of the record. It's a really good, you know, middle of the road track in the middle of the record, but I know some people that absolutely adore this song, so it's definitely got its fans. I'm one of them. I like this song quite a bit. It's maybe not the best song necessarily on the record, but I would put this up against any other type of song like this from the era that's kind of a throwback song, and I'm pretty sure it'll slay it. And now it's time to flip the record over if you're listening to the vinyl version, because we are on track number 6, another song that went on to be an absolutely huge hit for the band. We're talking about Sweet Emotion. And this is another one like Walk This Way that through the years of hearing this song, every time they're on TV, every time it's on the radio, every time you see them live, you might be a little bit burnt out on it. But if you take all that, throw it out the door and really just look at the song and the recording and the production and the playing and everything about this, it's a great song. It is a really good song. It has that iconic opening with the talk box and the just kind of slow momentum building up, and then once it really just like dives into the rockin' part, it's just a stone cold rock and roll classic. It's so great. And these lyrics really paint a picture of what the band was at that time. The whole pulling into town in the police car, your daddy said I took you just a little bit too far. I mean, come on guys, that was Aerosmith in 1975. They were just doing everything they could to just be these debaucherous rock and roll guys, and it really shows on this song like this. But the other thing that really shows on a song like this is the fact that these guys had the chops to keep up with the greats. I know a lot of people have always said they're not as good as something like the Rolling Stones or something of that nature, but I gotta be honest with you guys, might make some people hate me for this. I like Aerosmith a whole lot better than the Rolling Stones. And I know they're kind of a knockoff of them, but I just think they're the better version of it. I think they delivered it better. To me, they have more interesting songs and more interesting records, but you know, to each his own, of course. But back to Sweet Emotion. This is a killer song. The guitar work again on this one is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this one, you cannot deny the musicianship on this song. When you throw out all of the, you know, again, just hearing it too much in your life, this is such a killer song, and there's a reason it's an iconic song. It's killer. This is another one that you can tell in the studio the guys knew this was going to be a single, and they knew it was going to be huge, and they were right. And then next up for track number 7, we have No More, No More, kind of a deep cut. And it's a song about the band kind of getting tired of being on the road already, even though it's only their 3rd record. And it's a good one. It's a really good song. It's kind of a throwaway, kind of a filler track, but even for that, it's really good. It's just a straightforward rock song. There's honestly not a whole lot to say about it, but it is really cool. Kind of the build-up after the No More, No More, and then that riff that comes after is really cool. But honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It's probably one of the weaker songs on this record, but I would still say it's gonna smoke a lot of other rock songs out there. Trust me, it's still a great song. And then we go into track number 8, Round and Round, another song that could arguably be called a throwaway track, but again, it's pretty good by rock and roll standards. There's nothing really of note with the lyrics, again, kind of just some metaphorical stuff. You don't really know what's going on, but the musicianship is still there, and the build-up at the end as it kind of just crescendos into this just like big thing with saying round and round and round over and over again. If you've heard the song, you know what I'm talking about. That part is really, really cool, and honestly would have probably been a good place to end the record, but these guys weren't done with you. They weren't done with you. They wanted to send you out with one more killer song. And that's what they did with You See Me Crying, the ballad of the record. And we all know Aerosmith went on to put out a lot of ballads to a lot of success. But at this point, they weren't really known for that. Of course, Dream On was a big song and it was kind of ballady, but it was kind of rocking. But this one, You See Me Crying, is definitely a ballad in the classic sense of a ballad. I mean, come on, the title of it is You See Me Crying. It starts out with a piano, with Steven singing over it, and of course the band comes in over time, and it's a really well-constructed song. And this one should rank right up there with the big ballads like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, What It Takes, Angel, Amazing. I don't really know why it isn't in that area other than the fact that Aerosmith wasn't really known for ballads necessarily, but anyone that argues that they just decided to do ballads in their later career, it was on the early stuff, but it was just maybe executed a little bit better so people don't, you know, they don't get as mad about it, basically, is the takeaway on that. And towards the end when Steven is just kind of doing his high-pitched, squealy, screamy thing, I don't have a better way to describe it, but if you've heard the song, you know what I'm talking about. That is something very unique to this track. I've heard some people say they don't like that before, but I think it's great. I think it has a lot of emotion behind it, and this is a song you can tell was very much from the heart. The guys really wanted to present something that was emotional and really captivating, and I think they captured that really well on this recording. And there you have it. We got through Toys in the Attic, and what a classic it is. I don't have anything bad to say about this record. I love it. I adore it. I can only imagine how cool it was to live in 1975 when this came out fresh, and you also got Alive and Dressed to Kill. Welcome on Nightmare right around the corner. What a time to be alive for music. I'm sure there's a lot of bad music too, but we don't talk about that. But the takeaway from this is if you've ever been put off by Aerosmith because of the current incarnation of the band or Steven Tyler's current antics or anything like that, maybe you even heard music from another dimension and you just don't want to delve into the past, I implore you to delve into the past. And I think this should be right up there with all the classic rock records, and I think a lot of people do include it up there, but sometimes Aerosmith I feel is a little bit ignored because of their current version of their band. But you gotta remember, this is what they were then, and oh boy, what they were at that time was just an incredible rock and roll band that could just rip anybody to shreds in the genre. And that about does it. So what do you guys think about this record? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your experiences. If you love it, if you hate it, if it's middle of the road for you, let me know. Let me know all that in the comments below. And if you have a request for a future episode, once I get through all these that I have a bit of an emotional attachment to, I'm going to be delving into those. I'm keeping track of all the ones that have been submitted so far. So leave a comment below for future episode suggestions. And if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you actually, you know, can be part of this experience as we continue it. Hit the little alarm so you actually get the updates. Hit that thumbs up as well, as I'm bugging you for all these other things. It really helps the channel out. Again, my name is Kimchi Chris, and I will see you guys on the next video.